Hello, this is my last sermon. What do you say in your last sermon? I got to thinking about famous last words. The joys of the internet, I thought I would pull some famous last words and just casually kind of speak around them. Hopefully with, a few serious points in there as well. So the idea is it's not a long sermon. I would like to think, in my time with you, you know what I'm probably saying now anyway, because I've been saying it for 3 and a bit years. So there's nothing new in many respects. I think I can say, you know my heart. And you hopefully know God's heart as well. But let me just share a few things. So some of these names may be familiar. So Richard B. Mellon, a multimillionaire, was the president of Alcoa. He and his brother Andrew had a little game of tag. You remember the game of tag? Going for about 7 decades. When Richard was on his deathbed, he called his brother over and whispered, "Last tag." Andrew remained it for 4 years until he died. Church family, tag. You're it. Your turn. I've talked often about, what we do as a church family, how we might be welcoming, how we might engage and encourage, some sort of encounter with Christ through all that we do here in this place, but even more so, what's in our hearts and our lives that's on display out there. And I guess particularly as I think around, kind of my going, who now does what? And of course, there's a wonderful team of people who are stepping into new roles and new ministries. There are those who are being stretched a little bit further, and continuing to do what they do, but a little bit more. There are those who thought they maybe had retired, who are very graciously assisting as well. But of course, there's you, my church family. You're the ones that continue the work, the mission, the witness of the church community here in Rayleigh and beyond. Sometimes I think we presume, mission and evangelism and sharing the gospel. Well, that's the job of the vicar. Actually, no, it's a shared responsibility. It's all our jobs to be salt and light in the world, exactly where God has placed us to be. And therefore, as there's no Tracy Marlowe and there's now no myself, over to you. I'm looking forward to hearing how the church family identifies, discovers in that year of exploration, if you like, your unique role and ministry, yes, here as part of a church community, but even more so what we do within our wider community that we're called to be and to share the love of Christ with. So tag, your turn. Sir Isaac Newton said this just before he died. "I don't know what I may seem to the world, but as to myself, I seem to have been only like a boy, playing on the seashore and diverting myself now and then in finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than the ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." What a lovely concluding words. We all know what Isaac Newton was like in, I guess, his discoveries and, his scientific endeavors, and his concluding words, all his fame, all that scientific, fascination. His observation is basically, I was just like a little boy playing and finding pebbles when there's a great ocean of undiscovered out there that I hadn't found. And I often think that's maybe us with our faith and God. And there's that kind of encouragement to us all and to myself to go, what I think I know of God, what I read of God in Scripture, what I see of God in creation and in others is just a tiny part. And I'm certain that God is always wanting to draw us into that deeper, wider breadth of understanding and insight and revelation of himself. And I think sometimes he waits for us to chase after, to push in, to explore, to discover, to want that for ourselves. And I guess my encouragement to you is, because when I read that kind of quote from Isaac Newton, you almost get the sense of, Isaac Newton, before he died, being like a little boy and just delighting in what he had discovered, but what yet was not discovered. And that joy and wonder for us in our faith to be rediscovered. When we think about, I guess, others who know us and know we go to church, what do they see? Do they see some sort of wonder and joy and delight in our faith and our love of God and Jesus Christ? Or do they hear us moaning and whinging and complaining about stuff? Do we exude a joy and a wonder and a fascination with Christ? And if we don't, then how might we rediscover that? Because that's really attractive, that's contagious and infectious. I often think, what should the church be? It should be infectious. That people look at us and kind of and say, and I want that. What they have, I'm missing, and I want it. And there's that kind of deep inward reflection in ourselves and honesty of prayer that says, help me to rediscover that. There's a lovely quote I used on Facebook the other day from a book I was reading. I'm going to see if I can quickly pull it up without getting hopefully too distracted and having to do a kind of a quick cut and edit here. But there's a lovely quote, here we go, from Francis Chan that says this. Bear with me. If you merely pretend that you enjoy God or love him, he knows. You can't fool him. Don't even try. Instead, tell him how you feel. Tell him that he isn't the most important thing in this life to you and that you're sorry for that. Tell him that you've been lukewarm and that you've chosen, whatever it might be, over him time and again. Tell him that you want him to change you, that you long to genuinely enjoy him. Tell him how you want to experience true satisfaction and pleasure and joy in your relationship with him. Tell him you want to love him more than anything else on this earth. Tell him you want to treasure the kingdom of heaven so much that you'd willingly sell everything in order to get it. Tell him what you like about him, what you appreciate, and what brings you joy. Let's just get real with God and real with ourselves about where we are in that walk and that relationship with God, and just be honest and pray for God's help that we might, I guess, make Jesus Lord of all of our life, that we might rediscover that fullness of joy in him. Let's just be honest. And I say that for myself as well, hence why that quote probably stood out to me when I read it the other day, that I might rediscover something of the joy and awe and wonder and mystery of God and Christ in my own next season. John Wayne said at the age of 72, when he died in LA, he turned to his wife and said these words: "Of course I know who you are. You're my girl. I love you." Oh, lovely last words from John Wayne to his wife. And that kind of got me thinking, and this is really kind of tying into my last point, but there's this lovely passage from Romans 8, 12 to 17, which is our reading for today, and it says this: "Therefore, brothers and sisters, we have an obligation, but it is not to the flesh to live according to it. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the misdeeds of the body, you will live. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you receive does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you receive brought about your adoption to sonship, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share his suffering, in order that we may also share in his glory." And of course, there's a lot I could speak around on that passage, but it's that simple bit in there that says, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God." Church family, you are part of God's family. I mean, for this season, you've been part of my family, and it's been a joy and a privilege to be part of your family. But we need to, I think, recognize how God views us. That back to that thing I talked about often about identity. What's our identity as Christians? Identity is as children of God. That's who we are. And the more we can comprehend and grasp that, our identity is as children of God, part of his family, heirs and co-heirs with Christ. That should permeate our being and give us joy. Another quote was this: "General John Sedgwick said to his men who were ducking from the gunfire of a Confederate sniper, they couldn't hit an elephant at this distance. He was shot by the sniper." What do I say about that? Actually, nothing. It just made me smile. We're allowed to have fun. It's okay. A quote from Humphrey Bogart. His last quote: "I should have never switched from Scotch to martinis." And I guess I kind of thought about that one in the sense of, church family, there is a challenge ahead for this church community, obviously without myself and without Tracy, Marlowe, and the children's worker. And those appointments will happen. It might take a little bit of time, but those, hopefully 3 appointments will happen expediently, but in reality, maybe 12 months, maybe longer, I don't know. Please don't, if I say switch, don't switch from Scotch to martinis. Don't switch from Holy Trinity and St. Michael's to somewhere else. Please roll up your sleeves, muck in. Often one of my observations about large church, be it this large church or other large churches I've been privileged to be part of, is there can be a culture of somebody else. Oh, the chairs need putting out. Oh, somebody else will do that. Oh, the teas and coffees need sorting. Oh, somebody else will do that. We need somebody to be a signs person or a reader or an intercessor. Oh, somebody else will do that. Actually, no. There isn't a somebody else. There's you. And my encouragement to you as a church family in this challenge of, this next season is don't jump ship. Don't go somewhere else. Roll up your sleeves, muck in, and help in whatever way that looks. It may be in prayer, it may be in finance, it may be in practical things, it may be in administration or words of encouragement. I don't know. But my year of exploration, as I've talked about for the last 5 months, has been about exploring what is the unique thing God is calling me into in this season. And it's not about doing more, so please hear me right. It's not about doing more, but it is about discerning where the Holy Spirit is leading. And sometimes it is about just mucking in and helping. What I really like about the Church of England in its vocational process, when you become a priest, you are licensed a deacon first. And deacon just means servant, diakonoi, servants. And when you go from being a deacon to a priest a year later, you're still a deacon. You're never not a deacon. So all priests, all archdeacons, all archbishops, they're still deacons. First and foremost, they're still servants. So just roll up the sleeves and muck in. And I hope, some of the evidence of my ministry with you is I'm seeing a thing that needs doing, chairs putting away, tidying up, washing up, whatever the thing is, and I've just rolled up my sleeves and done it because I'm a deacon and I'm a priest. And so church family, please support and encourage and help and roll up your sleeves and muck in and don't change from scotch to martinis. And my last, and I've been slightly artistic license with regard to last words on this one. And so these are not technically Jesus' last words to the disciples. Might have been his last words to some of the disciples at the Last Supper, but not quite the last words. But they emphasize something that I wanted to say, and it's these. A new commandment I give you. Love one another, as I have loved you. So you also must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Church, and that goes back to an earlier point I made. How will people know that you are a disciple of Jesus Christ? By the love that they see and hear and observe in you for others. For others in the church family and for others outside of the church family. That is the mark of our discipleship. The love that we have for one another. So reread those words of Christ. May they penetrate my heart, our heart, your heart, that we might think through, how can I demonstrate the love of Christ to one another? What might that look like in this moment and beyond? So those are my last words. I don't think I've said anything new that I haven't already said or wrote for the last 3.5 years. So church family, God bless. Bye-bye.